At midnight Friday into Saturday morning, a large B-2 strike package comprised of bombers launched from the continental United States. As part of the plan to maintain tactical surprise, part of the package proceeded to the west and into the Pacific as a decoy, a deception effort known only to an extremely small number of planners and key leaders here in Washington and in Tampa. The main strike package, comprised of 7 B-2 Spirit bombers, each with 2 crew members, proceeded quietly to the east with minimal communications. Throughout the 18-hour flight into the target area, the aircraft completed multiple in-flight refuelings. Once over land, the B-2s linked up with escort and support aircraft in a complex, tightly timed maneuver requiring exact synchronization across multiple platforms in a narrow piece of airspace, all done with minimal communications. This type of integration is exactly what our joint force does better than anyone else in the world. At approximately 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time last night, and just prior to the strike package entering Iran, a U.S. submarine in the Central Command Area of Responsibility launched more than 24 Tomahawk land attack cruise missiles against key surface infrastructure targets at Esfahan. As the Operation Midnight Hammer strike package entered Iranian airspace, the U.S. employed several deception tactics, including decoys, as the 4th and 5th generation aircraft pushed out in front of the strike package at high altitude and high speed, sweeping in front of the package for enemy fighters and surface-to-air missile threats. The strike package was supported by U.S. Strategic Command, U.S. Transportation Command, U.S. Cyber Command, U.S. Space Command, U.S. Space Force, and U.S. European Command. As the strike package approached Fordow and Natanz, the U.S. protection package employed high-speed suppression weapons to ensure safe passage of the strike package, with fighter assets employing preemptive suppressing fires against any potential Iranian surface-to-air threats. We are currently unaware of any shots fired at the U.S. strike package on the way in. At approximately 6:40 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 2:10 a.m. Iran time, the lead B-2 dropped 2 GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator weapons on the first of several aim points at Fordow. As the President stated last night, the remaining bombers then hit their targets as well, with a total of 14 MOPs dropped against 2 nuclear target areas. All 3 Iranian nuclear infrastructure targets were struck between 6:40 p.m. and 7:05 p.m. Eastern Time. Again, that's about 2:10 in the morning local time in Iran, with the Tomahawk missiles being the last to strike at Esfahan to ensure we retain the element of surprise throughout the operation. Following weapons release, the Midnight Hammer strike package exited Iranian airspace and the package began its return home. We are unaware of any shots fired at the package on the way out. Iran's fighters did not fly, and it appears that Iran's surface-to-air missile systems did not see us. Throughout the mission, we retained the element of surprise. In total, U.S. forces employed approximately 75 precision-guided weapons during this operation. This included, as the President stated last night, 14 30,000-pound GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrators, marking the first ever operational use of this weapon. I know that battle damage is of great interest. Final battle damage will take some time, but initial battle damage assessments indicate that all 3 sites sustained extremely severe damage and destruction. More than 125 U.S. aircraft participated in this mission, including B-2 stealth bombers, multiple flights of fourth and fifth generation fighters, dozens and dozens of air refueling tankers, a guided missile submarine, and a full array of intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance aircraft, as well as hundreds of maintenance and operational professionals. As the Secretary said, this was the largest B-2 operational strike in U.S. history and the second longest B-2 mission ever flown, exceeded only by those in the days following 9/11. Well prior to the strike, General Kurilla elevated force protection measures across the region, especially in Iraq, Syria, and the Gulf. Our forces remain on high alert and are fully postured to respond to any Iranian retaliation or proxy attacks, which would be an incredibly poor choice. We will defend ourselves. The safety of our service members and civilians remains our highest priority. This mission demonstrates the unmatched reach, coordination, and capability of the United States military. In just a matter of weeks, this went from strategic planning to global execution. This operation underscores the unmatched capabilities and global reach of the United States military. As the President clearly said last night, no other military in the world could have done this. I join the President and the Secretary in being incredibly proud of the air crews, naval forces, cyber operators, planners, and support teams, and commanders who made this mission possible. It is their skill, discipline, and teamwork that makes this operation possible. I am particularly proud of our discipline related to operational security, something that was of great concern to the President, the Secretary, General Kurilla, and me, and we will continue to focus on this. As we stand here this morning, many assets are still airborne, and we have hundreds deployed. I ask that we keep our warfighters on their way home and our deployed service member in our thoughts. Our joint force remains ready to defend the United States, our troops, and our interests in the region. Thank you very much.
We will take a few questions, Phil.
Me?
Yeah.
So, is regime change off the table, Mr. Secretary? And to the chairman, you said the battle damage assessment is still ongoing, but do you believe that some nuclear capability in Iran remains?
This mission was not and has not been about regime change. The President authorized a precision operation to neutralize the threats to our national interests posed by the Iranian nuclear program and the collective self-defense of our troops and our ally Israel.
Thanks for your question. I think BDA is still pending, and it would be way too early for me to comment on what may or may not still be there. But thanks for the question.
Green. No, behind you.
Excuse me, Mr. Secretary, can you tell me, was there a particular moment when the President decided to pull the trigger on this operation where he said, now, rather than being, something in the holster, now we're going to pull the trigger on it?
I would just say, having the opportunity to witness his leadership, he was fully committed to the peace process, wanted a negotiated outcome, gave Iran every single opportunity, and fortunately was met by stonewalling, which is why he gave them plenty of time to continue to come to the table and give up enrichment, give up the nuclear program. But there was I won't say the particular moment, there was certainly a moment in time where he realized that it had to be a certain action taken in order to minimize the threat to us and our troops. Yeah.
General, you say that General Kurilla increased force protection in Iraq, Syria, and Gulf, in those areas. Were they given any advance warning the attacks were coming? And also, Mr. Secretary, when were congressional leaders notified? How long before the attacks took place?
Sir, to your first question, the risk has clearly been rising over the last few weeks in the region. Based on that, and not a particular awareness of this operation, we've made smart decisions to minimize the risk to U.S. forces in the region.
So we get no advance warning?
No, sir.
And congressional?
They were notified after the planes were safely out. we complied with the notification requirements of the War Powers
After
Act.
the attacks, they were notified.
They were immediately thereafter. Yes.
Thank you, Secretary. Two quick questions. Do you believe you completely destroyed Iranian nuclear program? And how about Iranian ballistic missiles? Your ally as Israel always saying that is biggest threat. And second question is very important. What will be your next step if Iran or militias under Iranian influence in the region attack U.S. interests or allies in the region?
And you can chime in on this too, Mr. Chairman. The battle damage assessment is ongoing, but our initial assessment, as the chairman said, is that all of our precision munitions struck where we wanted them to strike and had the desired effect, which means especially in Fordo, which was the primary target here, we believe we achieved destruction of capabilities there. Ultimately, wherever it may be, whether it's in Iraq or Syria or bases in the Gulf, as the president said, it would be, as the chairman said, it would be a very bad idea for Iran or its proxies to attempt to attack American forces. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Regarding retaliations, Iran and North Korea are cooperating on nuclear and missile development. Do you think there is a possibility that Iran, North Korea, and the other forces, such as China, will join forces to retaliate against the United States?
Well, unfortunately, because of the policies under the previous administration, we drove those countries together, and ultimately that creates a challenging environment. For this particular operation, the focus is on Iran and Iranian nuclear capabilities. That's our focus here, is to not just say that they can't have, but President Trump has said from over 20 years, frankly, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And ultimately, he decided this is the moment, given their stonewalling, when direct military action had to be taken to prevent that from happening. Yes.
Thank you very much. General Kane, I understand OPSEC, I respect OPSEC. Can you say at all what security procedures are being taken to protect U.S. troops in Iraq and elsewhere in the Middle East? And Secretary Hegseth, as a global war on terrorism veteran, what do you say to veterans who may be concerned the U.S. is getting into another open-ended war in the Middle East over weapons of mass destruction?
Thanks, sir, for the question. I won't comment on what force protection measures are being taken in the region. What I will say is we're being proactive and not reactive, and being very thoughtful about ensuring that we do all that we can to protect our forces out there.
And I would just say, as the president has directed and made clear, this is most certainly not open-ended. It doesn't mean it limits our ability to respond. We will respond if necessary. The most powerful military in the world is postured and prepared to defend our people. But what the president gave us, as I said, was a focused, powerful, and clear mission on the destruction of Iranian nuclear capabilities. Those were the targets. That's what was struck. That's what was overwhelming. That's what was overwhelming. That's what the Iranian regime needs to understand, as the president put out last night. He wants peace. There needs to be a negotiated settlement here. We ultimately demonstrated that Iran cannot have a nuclear capability. That is a very clear mission set on this operation. Yes, hold on. Yes, right there.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Question for the Secretary and the Chairman. How was this strike coordinated with the Israelis on a strategic level, militarily, and on a tactical level? Was there any direct Israeli military participation in this operation?
Well, I would say certainly Israel had an incredible military success, especially at the beginning and ongoing, in degrading Iranian capabilities, in degrading Iranian launchers, MRBMs. It's been incredible to watch what our ally Israel has been able to do. And there certainly have been conversations. I mean, General Kurilla at CENTCOM has worked closely in the defense of Israel for many years. And part of this operation was the defense of Israel and the ongoing defense of Israel. But as it pertains to this strike, this was U.S. operated and U.S. led.
We took advantage of some of the preparatory work that's been done over the past week and a half in terms of axis of approach. I won't get into the particulars, but as the Secretary said, it was a U.S. strike. We made sure we were not in the same piece of airspace and sky. Aside from that, that was the extent of it.
We'll take a couple more. Yeah, right there.
Question to the Secretary first. Are you concerned whatsoever now about the reaction from U.S. allies given the strike, particularly those in the Gulf? And to the Chairman, if I may, I understand you don't want to speak to specific assets and force protection measures, but do you anticipate at least having to bring in any further assets from other theaters to aid in force protection over the coming days?
We certainly understand the challenges of allies in the region, and we have been respectful and in working in collaboration with them as it pertains to basing and sensitivities there. Ultimately, they've got a lot of assets and people in those locations also where American troops are co-located. So that's a consideration of ours. We've been in close consultation with them, and we appreciate the support that we have got.
Thanks for the question on sort of the global picture. And as you know, that's one of my jobs, is to look globally at the entire range of challenges. We are always carefully considering our force posture around the world and then offering options to the Secretary and to the President. I won't comment on any future things, but the American people should know that we carefully consider those moves around the world and try to modulate as needed our force structure in the region.
Absolutely. Yeah, right here.
Thank you. What communications are being sent to the Iranians right now, and is there any possibility of diplomacy now or in the coming days?
I can only confirm that there are both public and private messages being directly delivered to the Iranians in multiple channels, giving them every opportunity to come to the table. They understand precisely what the American position is, precisely what steps they can take to allow for peace, and we hope they do so. Yes.
The president may not want an open-ended conflict. The Iranians may disagree. Are you prepared for a protracted war?
Well, anything can happen in conflict. We acknowledge that. But the scope of this was intentionally limited. That's the message that we're sending. With the capabilities of the American military, nearly unlimited. So Iran, in that sense, has a choice. But we've made it very clear to them, this is nuclear sites, this is nuclear capabilities, this is the line that the president set, and we set that back. Now is the time to come forward for peace. But I think one of the takeaways from this as well is the unprecedented level of ongoing cooperation. I can't speak highly enough of the chairman and his staff and General Kurilla in CENTCOM, what they've done to look around the corner, to pre-position, to understand how an operation like this comes together. The scope and scale of what occurred last night would take the breath away of almost any American if you had an opportunity to watch it in real time. And I think Tehran is certainly calculating the reality that planes flew from the middle of America in Missouri overnight, completely undetected over 3 of their most highly sensitive sites, and we were able to destroy nuclear capabilities. And our boys in those bombers are on their way home right now. We believe that'll have a clear psychological impact on how they view the future, and we certainly hope they take the path of negotiated peace. But I could not be more proud of how this building operated, of the precision, the sensitivity, and the professionalism of the troops involved in this effort. I will take one more. We'll take one more question. Yes, right there.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Concerning the justification for these strikes, in March, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence released their threat assessment, concluding, quote, Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Khomeini has not authorized the nuclear programs he suspended in 2003, unquote. So what new intelligence does the U.S. have since then that the Iranians have changed their position on nuclear weapons? And does this new intelligence come from U.S. sources and methods, or are we getting this information from other countries?
Well, I would just simply say that the president's made it very clear. He's looked at all of this, all of the intelligence, all of the information, and come to the conclusion that the Iranian nuclear program is a threat, and was willing to take this precision operation to neutralize that threat in order to advance American national interests reduce the Iranian nuclear program, and obviously collective self-defense of ourselves and our allies. So he looked at all of it, understood the nature of the threat, and took bold action I think the American people would expect in a commander-in-chief. That's all we've got. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, do you have any of the WC-135s up to check for radioactive material in the atmosphere?
than them eventually getting a nuclear bomb. Again, this was always going to happen at some point. This capability was getting taken out by us or the Israelis, and now the conditions were absolutely perfect for it to take place right now.
Just a massive show of U.S. military might, 125 aircraft and submarines armed with Tomahawk missiles as well, too. Mike Lyons, a retired U.S. Army major, we appreciate your insight and analysis. As always, we thank you for making time for us this morning.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me.
All right, we're going to continue this conversation. How will this new involvement in the U.S. in this conflict impact here in the United States and across the Middle East? For more on these developments, we want to bring in Mike Wegeheim. He is the Washington-based correspondent for the Jewish News Syndicate. Mike, we appreciate you being here with us from the White House this morning. What are you hearing about what's going on in Jerusalem right now? Because we have heard that Iran has launched retaliatory strikes. Has Israel been able to effectively repel those?
Well, it depends on your point of view. There were 86 injured this morning across 3 different strike sites within Israel, in Tel Aviv, in Ness Ziona, and up in Haifa, where an IDF interceptor actually fell and caused some injuries. Several Iranian launchers were taken out this morning during that process. However, they're obviously still able to fire and do damage. By the way, all of these continuing to hit civilian sites, no military sites have been struck in Israel, which is part of the complaint coming from Jerusalem. There's also a diplomatic war battle going on right now, and I think that has been more successful on Israel's front because we look at reaction across the Middle East today, and it's been fairly tempered. Saudi Arabia put out a statement about the alarm vis-a-vis the American strikes last night and concern. The Qataris did the same, but not a whole lot of pushback, not a whole lot of condemnation. Everybody quietly, it seems, understanding that this needed to be done. Nobody celebrating out in the open, but nobody really pushing back as if the Americans are going to be responsible for breaking out World War III here. I think that's more important than anything. If this had happened years ago, I think the reaction from the Arab world, from the Muslim world, would have been much different. We're seeing the traditional American allies, yes, pushing back a little bit, but more for their own domestic bases rather than an international front. I think from that standpoint, Jerusalem has a leg up.
That's a really good point, Mike. The Secretary of Defense moments ago was asked directly, was one of the goals of this military operation by the United States regime change? He pointedly said no, but it's been widely reported that the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been pushing the United States and President Trump to execute this mission that went ahead last night. Does that continue to be a goal of Israel from the Netanyahu's perspective?
I'm not sure if it's necessarily a goal. I don't think Netanyahu and anybody within the Prime Minister's office or Knesset will shed a tear if the regime is eliminated. But don't forget, that causes a whole host of other concerns. We heard J.D. Vance just a moment ago here on American television saying that regime change is not something that the Americans are looking for here, that they're not at war with Iran, that they're at war with Iran's nuclear program. Well, if that's the case, if they're at war with the nuclear program and the nuclear program is indeed eliminated and we're waiting for more clarification as to the effects of the strikes last night, then one would figure that would be the end of American involvement going forward unless Iran retaliates against American bases and American interests in the region, which is something else to discuss as well here. But I don't think that Israel, having gotten what they got so far from the Trump administration, is going to want to push more and risk backlash from the White House and risk, sensing a lack of gratitude, lack of loyalty. We've heard those things before from Donald Trump. If this is what Jerusalem got from the White House last night, I don't think they're going to be pushing for regime change just for the sake of it at this point and wind up spending unnecessary political capital on that particular topic.
All right, we are at the very beginning of this story, but Mike Wegeheim, we appreciate you joining us from the White House this morning. He is the Washington-based correspondent for the Jewish News Syndicate. We've got much more ahead for you this Sunday morning as we continue.
A big thank you there to Tom Fitzgerald and our Fox 5 DC team for their coverage. We will be dipping in and out of that as they touch on everything related to those U.S. strikes on the Iranian nuclear facilities, the 3 key facilities hit by the U.S. Really just hours ago, if you think about it here. We did hear from the spokesperson, the Secretary for the Department of Defense, Pete Hegseth, just about 30 minutes ago as he provided much more information alongside the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Raisin Kane. If you did miss that, we'll play it for you a little bit later on in full, but you can also find it on our YouTube page. Just go to YouTube and search Live Now from Fox. While you're there, hit that subscribe button because you'll get alerts when we have major events just like this one. It is now 8:46 on the East Coast and 5:46 on the West Coast. My name is Josh Breslow, and I've been here for the past several hours to bring you all of your top stories and live events from across the country and across the world. Do want to head to a quick 2-minute commercial break, but a lot more coverage of the U.S. strikes on Iran coming up in just 2 minutes. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox. My name is Josh Breslow, and I've been here for the past several hours to bring you everything related to the U.S. strikes there on Iran, as President Trump does say that those Iranian sites have been completely obliterated. Now, we are getting reaction coming in from all over the world, and I do want to pop this up on your screen right here, as this just came in from the president of Iran. He says, quote, "This aggression showed that the United States is the primary instigator of the Zionist regime's hostile actions against the Islamic Republic of Iran. Although they initially tried to deny their role after our armed forces' decisive and deterrent response and the Zionist regime's clear incapacity, they were inevitably forced to enter the field themselves." Again, that statement here just coming in from Iran's president. We have not received a statement from Iran's supreme leader just yet, but I imagine we will get one on social media coming up in just a bit. Also want to take you out to this post right here from Rapid Response 47 for President Trump. As we do see during that news conference, the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said, quote, "This mission was not and has not been about regime change. The president authorized a precision operation to neutralize the threats to our national interests posed by the Iranian nuclear program." Lucas Tomlinson over at Fox News, a friend of the show here, saying that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Raisin Kane, says that some B-2s flew over the Pacific as decoys after leaving the U.S., but 7 of them were then sent, quote unquote, quietly to the east with, quote, minimal communications to strike. Those are those deception tactics that you heard the chairman kind of talking about during that news conference there. Again, we are getting a lot of reaction coming in from all over the country here in the U.S. as well as all over the world. We're going to have some of those other statements coming up here in just a bit. Do want to take you out to this live look over the White House as we let you know that as of right now, the White House says President Trump does not have any news conferences, any public events that are scheduled for today. However, if that does change and we get anything, even one of those press gaggles where they do kind of gather around Air Force One and ask him questions, any of that you'll be able to watch right here on Live Now from Fox. Also do want to take you out to this post right here. This is actually the question that we have been posing for you all throughout the morning, and you can see one of the options has an overwhelming majority. The question is, President Trump ordered those U.S. strikes in Iran. Was that, in your opinion, a good idea? All you have to do to vote is scan that QR code top right-hand side of your screen or go to livenowfox.com/connect to cast your vote. As of right now, 87% of y'all at home do say yes, 13% say no, and I can tell you we have thousands upon thousands of votes that have been cast over the past several hours. Also want to pop this up on your screen right here. This is coming in from the New York Post as Hegseth does hail those Iran strikes as, quote, an incredible and overwhelming success, and he does say soldiers were not hit. He does have those photos that were posted as well. You can see before the strikes and then after. We also have the Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, who says Iran's nuclear program is a grave threat to international security, and Canada has been consistently clear that Iran can never be allowed to develop a nuclear weapon. That is the same language that we have heard from so many officials here and will continue to hear. We do have to step away for our final 2-minute commercial break of the hour, but so much more news to get to as we cover the latest here on those U.S. strikes on Iran. You're watching Live Now from Fox. We'll be right back. Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox. We are approaching the top of the hour here, 8:55 on the East Coast and 5:55 on the West Coast. My name is Josh Breslow, and I'm here to bring you all of your top stories and live events from across the country and across the world. And we do, of course, continue to cover everything related to those U.S. strikes on the Iranian nuclear facilities that President Trump does say have obliterated all three of those key sites. I do want to take you out to this live image that we do have over London as we are gathering information on a story that is coming out of there. Reuters providing a little bit in the way of details, saying that London police say they've charged 7 Iranians with grievous bodily harm after a reported fight at a protest near the embassy. London's Metropolitan Police said that they had been alerted to an apparent fight outside the Iranian embassy Friday, which local media reported occurred during a protest against the Iranian leadership. The Reuters Daily Briefing newsletter provides all the news here, so here's what we got. Police said 8 people were arrested in connection with the incident, including one man who was in the hospital with serious but non-life-threatening injuries. We also know another man was hospitalized. 7 of those arrested were charged with causing grievous bodily harm. That's according to police. They wrote that in a statement and said, quote, all are Iranian nationals. Police said they had been remanded in custody ahead of a court appearance on Monday. That's tomorrow. The 8th person was still in a hospital and had been bailed. That is, again, according to that brief police statement. We are working to gather some more details on all of that, and we'll bring you more information as we do get it. But again, we are taking a live look over London as police say they have charged 7 Iranians with grievous bodily harm after a fight at a protest near the embassy. We'll keep you updated here as we get more information. All right, so if you were watching a bit earlier, we did hear from Iran's foreign minister providing some fairly lengthy comments and answering questions from members of the media. All of it was in English and, of course, related to the U.S. strikes. I do want to play that for you here on Live Now from Fox. On the other side of that, Corella Hara will be in the hot seat with everything you need to know about those strikes on Iran. You're watching Live Now from Fox. Let's take a listen.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Very good morning to you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so glad to be with you this morning. Actually, we invited you yesterday for a briefing on the latest developments on the ground and, of course, on diplomatic process. Because I came here from Geneva, where we had our first ministerial meeting of Iran E3, and then I had here yesterday lots of useful, important meetings with the foreign ministers of our region, and we discussed about different initiatives and ideas existed for a peaceful settlement of this question. But as all of you know, we suddenly faced with the aggression by American forces to our nuclear facilities. The Islamic Republic of Iran condemns in the strongest terms the United States' brutal military aggression against Iran's peaceful nuclear facilities. It is an outrageous, grave, and unprecedented violation of the fundamental principles of the Charter of the United Nations and international law. The warmongering and lawless administration in Washington is solely and fully responsible for the dangerous consequences and far-reaching implications of its act of aggression. The U.S. military attack on the territorial integrity and national sovereignty of a UN member state carried out with genocidal Israeli regime carried out in collusion with the genocidal Israeli regime has once again revealed the extent of the United States' hostility towards the peace-seeking people of Iran, who will never compromise over their independence and sovereignty. The Islamic Republic of Iran continue to defend Iran's territory, sovereignty, security, and people by all means necessary against not just US military aggression, but also the reckless and unlawful actions of the Israeli regime. While President Trump was elected on a platform of putting an end to America's costly involvement of forever wars in our part of the world, he has betrayed not only Iran by abusing our commitment to diplomacy, but also deceived his own voters by submitting to the wishes of a wanted war criminal who has grown accustomed to exploiting the lives and wealth of American citizens to further the Israeli regime's objectives. The US act of aggression against Iran's peaceful nuclear facilities constitutes not only a flagrant breach of the UN Charter, especially the prohibition of the use of force under Article 2, Paragraph 4, and the obligation to respect the state's territorial integrity and sovereignty, but also a violation of UN Security Council Resolution 2231. It cannot be emphasized enough how much of a devastating blow that the US, a permanent member of the Security Council, has dealt to the global non-proliferation regime. The Islamic Republic of Iran reminds the United Nations, the Security Council, the UN Secretary General, the International Atomic Energy Agency, and other relevant international bodies of their duty and responsibility to take urgent and decisive action in response to this breach of international law. Silence in the face of such blatant aggression will plunge the world into an unprecedented level of danger and chaos. Humanity has come too far as a species to allow a lawless bully to take us back to the law of the jungle. The Islamic Republic of Iran calls on the Security Council to convene an emergency session to unequivocally condemn the criminal act of aggression by the United States against Iran and to hold the administration in Washington accountable for its violations of fundamental principles of United Nations Charter and of norms of international law. The responsibility of the IAEA and its Director General, who through evident bias in favor of warmongering parties paved the way for the current violence and bloodshed, is now clearer than ever. We call on the IAEA Board of Governors to immediately convene and carry out its legal responsibility in response to the dangerous US attack on Iran's peaceful nuclear facilities, all of which have been under the agency's full safeguards and monitoring. The world must not forget that it was the United States which, in the midst of a process to forge a diplomatic outcome, betrayed diplomacy by supporting the genocidal Israeli regime's launch of an illegal war of aggression on the Iranian nation. Not content with such malign actions, the United States itself has now also opted for a dangerous military operation and aggression against the people of Iran. In doing so, the US administration holds sole and full responsibility for the consequences of its actions, including the Islamic Republic of Iran's right to self-defense under the principles of the United Charter. In accordance with the UN Charter and its provisions allowing a legitimate response in self-defense, Iran reserves all options to defend its security interests and people. Thank you very much.
We will now be taking questions. We'd like to start with the Associated Press.
Sayın Bakan, müzakere kapıları hala açık mı
Distinguished Minister,
görüyorsunuz?
are the doors for negotiation still open?
Tamam. Şimdi ses geliyor mu?
Can you hear me now?
Sayın Bakan,
Distinguished Minister, the question is as follows. Is the door for negotiation still open?
Interpreter, please speak.
Can you hear me, sir? Can you hear me, sir? In the English channel, can you hear me?
If I may just step in here and just translate real quick for my colleague. He's asking if there are still room for negotiations moving forward.
Arapça olarak diye sorabilirim eğer Arapça biliyorsa.
It's all right now. You can his translate is okay.
Türkçe mi? Sayın Bakan, Ahmet Gannam yine Televizyon Arabi. Müzakerelere hala kapı açık mı görüyorsunuz? Tahran'la görüşmüş
Is the
müydünüz? Bugün
negotiation door still open? Did you contact Tehran? What kind of damage has been incurred on the nuclear facilities? Is there any intermediary country like Turkey, like Saudi Arabia, like Qatar? Are you continuing your such activities of mediation? How do you see the process? Thank you.
Well, I have been in touch with Tehran, of course. I still do not have exact information about the level of damages, but I don't think it matters how much damages have been made. Attacking a nuclear facility by itself is an unforgivable violation of international law and should be condemned. Yesterday, as I said, I had discussion and talks with a number of foreign ministers of the region. Almost all of them are very much concerned and interested to play a role to end this aggression by Israel, of course. They were worried about a possible attack by the United States, but yesterday we were all talking about how to stop the Israeli aggression. Well, of course, the door for diplomacy should be always keep open, but this is not the case right now. My country has been under attack, under aggression, and we have to respond based on our legitimate right of self-defense. And we will do that as long as needed and necessary.
We'd now like to take a question from Al Jazeera.
Thank you very much, Minister. So you say that you need to respond right now, but we know that Iranians are known for their talents in negotiations, in diplomacy and trade. what would be the conditions after responding for Iran to come back to a negotiation table, maybe with the US as well? And Turkey has been offering that Ankara can mediate for a trilateral between Turkey, US, and Iran. What would be your response to that? Because right now the US is technically involved in this conflict. Thank you.
Well, I think it is irrelevant to ask Iran to return to diplomacy, because we were in the middle of diplomacy. We were in the middle of talks with the United States when Israelis blew it up. And again, we were in the middle of talks and negotiation with Europeans, happened only 2 days ago in Geneva, when this time Americans decided to blow it up. So we were in diplomacy, but we were attacked militarily. So it was not Iran, but the US who betrayed diplomacy. They betrayed negotiations. When at the middle of negotiations with us, they gave green light to Israelis, if not instructed them to attack Iran's nuclear facilities. I think they have proved that they are not men of diplomacy, and they only understand the language of threat and force. And this is very unfortunate. The United States showed that they have no respect to United Nations Charter. They have no respect to international law. They have no respect to any international law regarding, managing the world and facing challenges of the world. There is no red line that they have not crossed. And the last one, and the most dangerous one, was happened only last night, when they crossed a very big red line by attacking nuclear facilities. I don't know how much room is left for diplomacy. We are now calculating the damages. And as I said, the damages are not only for our nuclear facilities. The damages are for the United Nations Charter. It was not only Iran's facilities which was bombed, it was also the United Nations Charter. It was also Non-Proliferation Regime and NPT, which was bombed last night by Americans. And it was the rule of law and international law which was bombed. So now we have to see how much room is left for diplomacy, and we will decide.
I'd like to hand over to TRT World.
We're listening here to some comments that were made earlier today from the Iranian foreign minister discussing those latest U.S. strikes against some of Iran's nuclear facilities. We're going to continue with this in just a moment, but first, thank you all for joining us here at Live Now from Fox on this Sunday, June 22nd. My name is Karel Lahara. I'll be with you throughout the next several hours as we continue to discuss the top story of the day, and it is those strikes that were issued, that announcement first made last night by President Trump. We're going to step away for a brief commercial break, a live look there at the White House. As of right now, we are not expecting any press conferences featuring the president to happen today. But of course, if that changes, we will bring them to you live. Stay with us. More to come. Taking you back out to this live picture that I have at the White House on this Sunday as I bring you some of the bullet points of everything that has developed in the last several hours concerning the strikes against Iranian facilities, nuclear facilities there, conducted by the United States. Now, President Trump saying that Iran's key nuclear sites were, quote, completely and fully obliterated by U.S. strikes, speaking at the White House just hours after the attacks. He threatened more strikes and said Iran faced a choice between peace or tragedy. At the same time, Iran's foreign minister said the time for diplomacy has passed and that his country had the right to defend itself, saying the U.S. had, quote, crossed a very big red line. Now, according to the Associated Press, they give a little bit of a breakdown as to how we got here, saying that Israel launched a surprise barrage of attacks on sites in Iran on June 13th, which Israeli officials said was necessary to head off to what claimed was an imminent threat that Iran would build nuclear bombs. Iran retaliated with a series of missile and drone strikes in Israel, while Israel has continued to strike sites in Iran. I want to continue on with that news conference that we were showcasing just before the commercial break featuring the Iranian foreign minister. Let's listen into some more of this question and answer portion.
Mr. Minister, the U.S. President Donald Trump warned that Iran must now make peace, otherwise the future attacks, he says, would be far greater and much easier. So how is Tehran responding to that threats from Washington? Thank you.
I think it's not up to Iran to respond to that. The whole international community should respond of such a clear threat against the United Nations Charter. Iran has done nothing wrong. We do not understand why Iran should be attacked for a false accusation that Iran is seeking nuclear weapons. It's now more than 20 years that we are trying to prove that our peaceful nuclear program is in fact peaceful and would remain peaceful. We negotiated for a long time with the so-called P5+1, and we came to a deal which the whole world celebrated as an achievement of diplomacy. And then it was the US who withdrew from that deal and reimposed their sanctions and restarted their threats. Again, we were negotiating with the same administration. Then all of a sudden they decided to attack us, first by Israelis, then by themselves. And now they are threatening us for more attacks. So it's not up to Iran, but it's up to international community to condemn this, to prevent this. Otherwise, there will be nothing left for the international law, for the security at the world level. The Security Council should play its role, should play its responsibility to condemn and prevent these kind of threats. We will certainly defend our interest. We will certainly defend our territorial integrity, our sovereignty, and our people. And I'm so glad that our people are now fully understand what injustice they are doing against the Iranian people. They are united and in solidarity with the government, and we stand firm against any aggression.
Next, CNN Türk.
Mr. Minister, how do you assess the West's stance on Israel massacres? No one seems to mention Israel's allegedly illegal nuclear weapons. The German Chancellor even said Israel is doing the dirty work for us. So what is your response? Thank you.
Well, what should I say? You said everything. That Iran is under attack by a nuclear-armed superpower and a nuclear-armed regime. And Iran, as you know, is a non-nuclear-armed country. That should be certainly condemned. If not, the whole non-proliferation regime would be undermined and would be defeated. Iran is a committed member of NPT, but NPT is not able to protect us. So why a country like Iran or other countries who are interested to have a peaceful nuclear energy should rely on NPT for their peaceful activities? It is very unfortunate that Israel is doing, as the German Chancellor called, a dirty job. And by the way, they supported that dirty job. It's a shame. They know that Israel is doing a dirty job and they support it, and they give it every right to do it, and they call it defending itself. It's really a shame. Pardon? Well, I think I'm not in a position to reveal what we are going to do in response to what Americans did last night. I just talked about the fact that NPT failed to protect Iran from and its peaceful nuclear program, and this is a serious challenge.
Next, we'd like to take a question from IRIB. IRIB, if I can get a question from IRIB.
Yılmaz Parlar, Türker Gazete, Türkiye Cumhuriyeti'nde çıkan gazete. Bir de Net Haber Ajans. Sayın Bakan, Çin'in İran'a destek verdiği söyleniyor.
It is indicated that
Bu
China
konuda
is
Amerika
supporting
ve
Iran.
İsrail'in tarafından caydırıcı olmasını nasıl değerlendiriyorsunuz? Bir de Rusya ile olan ilişkiler, münasebetleri, beklentilerinizi öğrenebilir miyim?
And
Teşekkür
can we
ediyorum.
learn your expectations about your relations with the Russian Federation?
Well, there was a problem with the translation, or I think with the device, it doesn't work properly. I understood the last part of your question. Well, I'm going to Moscow this afternoon, and I have a meeting with President Putin tomorrow morning. Russia is a friend of Iran, and we enjoy a strategic partnership, and we always consult with each other and coordinate our positions. Russia has been a part and the participants of JCPOA, so they have been always a party to nuclear negotiations. And even in the past 2-3 months that we were negotiating with the United States, we always briefed our Russian friends about the latest about any progress or lack of progress in our talks. Well, I will have serious consultations with the Russian president tomorrow, and we continue to work with each other. Russia is also a permanent member of the Security Council, and we know that they were trying, together with China, to introduce a resolution to the Security Council for the cessation of hostilities. Obviously, now the situation has been changed, and I will have discussion with them that how it should be proceed.
The final question from IRIB, if we can hand over the microphone to the gentleman right there. Thank you.
خسته نباشید آقای عراقچی. عرض به خدمتتون که دیروز آقای اردوغان صحبت‌هایی داشتن در میانجیگری. فکر می‌کنید نقش ترکیه در این رابطه به چه ترتیب خواهد بود؟ میتونه ترکیه
Thank you. Yesterday, President Erdogan mentioned a mediation instrument. Can Turkey handle such a diplomacy or mediation activity?
با اردوغان رئیس جمهور محترم ترکیه داشتم. هم ترکیه
I had very productive meetings with the President of the Republic of Turkey yesterday, and I also had contacts with some of the countries of the region. Some of the countries of the region, such as Turkey, are indicating that they could be mediating so that the attacks from Israel could stop. I do believe that I'm going to start some actions and discussions about this to prevent this American aggression. Turkey very definitely has condemned the Israeli attacks, and also the countries of the region have also condemned these attacks. Now all the countries of this region and the Islamic countries are condemning the massacres and the killing of Israel. We as members of the OIC and the foreign ministers, we had a special meeting on the situation in Iran. Turkey was the chair of this session, and in relation to condemning Israeli attacks, a statement was shared to end this attack, and they indicated that they were on our side. The attack last night was a big murder. It was not just an attack against the Iranian people, but also the laws and the provisions of the United Nations were also violated. And the NPT was also damaged. Thus, this was a big blow to international security and to peace by America. We believe that the United Nations should see this as a threat. The behavior of America is threatening the world peace, and it is also a serious bottleneck for the international system. And we have important problems and pain in our region because of this, creating an important damage. The attack last night showed once again that the Zionist regime of Israel has not actually reached its targets and aims in Iran, and they have been harmed, and they have actually been in a crisis because of the heroic defense of Iran. And vis-a-vis this defense, they have received support from America. And this direct intervention of America is actually to save the Zionist regime, and maybe to save the prime minister specifically of the Zionist regime. This was the reason why America acted this way, and this shows that the White House is under the influence of this individual called Netanyahu, and this is a shame for the all American citizens. We continue to defend our country in a heroic manner. Our armed forces are ready. Our people with high level of self-confidence and with high level of motivation is ready to defend itself. The Iranian people's national honor has been damaged, and to win this back, they will defend themselves. We will never take a step back from our own law, from our honor, from our territory, and from our people.
Bloomberg Habertürk. Mr. Minister, thank you very much for doing this. Sena Alkan from Habertürk and Bloomberg HD. You said attacks at nuclear facilities are red line and you are calculating your response. So here is the question. What are the options? Are you going to retaliate at US bases in the region, or are you going to considering to close the Strait of Hormuz? And one more question as well. 2 times while you are at the table of negotiation, Israel and US attacked your soil. So do you still have the same level of trust to Western diplomacy? Thank you.
There are a variety of options available to us, and that's it. We never trusted Western countries when we negotiated them, and there are now even more reasons why we shouldn't trust them at all. Of course, the way for diplomacy should be always remain open. But, as I said, we are not in the situation right now to decide how to engage in diplomacy once again and with whom. So, let's wait for our response first. And when the aggression is ended, we decide how to engage in diplomacy once again.
Next, over to NTV.
Mr. Minister, thank you. I would like to ask a quick question. You had many dialogues with Mr. Steve Witkoff, the U.S. representative, during the negotiations. Did he call you after the attack? Who you talk with? Did you ever talk with any Western countries or United States? Did they call you? Thank you.
Well, my talks with Mr. Witkoff was indirect through the Omani foreign minister as intermediator, to whom I'm very grateful. And when the talks were stopped because of the US aggression, we are still receiving messages from Americans through different channels, Oman in particular, and there are also others who are passing the messages of the United States to us. And if needed, we respond to those messages through intermediators. Well, thank you very much, everybody. I think we are done.
Yes, we've come to the end of that press briefing. We'd like to thank the foreign minister for holding that briefing after the latest developments in his country, Iran, and in the wider Middle East region. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you indeed.
We just wanted to play out those comments in full there earlier today from the Iranian foreign minister discussing the U.S. strikes against several Iranian nuclear sites overnight. We're going to step away for a brief commercial break, taking a live look there out of Jerusalem and Israel. We'll continue our coverage when we come back. Taking a live look at the White House on this Sunday as we continue to discuss the U.S. strikes against Iranian nuclear facilities overnight. Now, the president's bombardment of 3 of those sites quickly sparking debate in Congress over his authority to launch those strikes. Republicans praising the president for decisive action, even as many Democrats warned he should have sought congressional support. I want to go through some of these reactions that have been posted here on X, starting here with House Speaker Mike Johnson, saying in part this: the president made the right call and did what he needed to do. Leaders in Congress were aware of the urgency of the situation, and the commander-in-chief evaluated that the imminent danger outweighed the time it would take for Congress to act. Continuing on here, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene saying this in part: every time America is on the verge of greatness, we get involved in another foreign war. There would not be bombs falling on the people of Israel if Netanyahu had not dropped bombs on the people of Iran first. Israel is a nuclear-armed nation. This is not our fight. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez saying the president's disastrous decision to bomb Iran without authorization is a grave violation of the Constitution and congressional war powers. He has impulsively risked launching a war that may ensnare us for generations. And then just one more reaction here from Senator Mullen, saying this: to those concerned about U.S. involvement, this isn't a, quote, forever war. In fact, it's ending one. POTUS was clear: Iran must never have a nuclear weapon. The Republican-led Senate GOP trusts President Trump to keep America safe, free, and prosperous. Peace through strength. I do want to get into this discussion a little bit further here by bringing onto the program now Rich Rubino, political analyst and historian. Rich, good to see you.
Thank you so much for having me on again.
Of course. All of this developing very quickly over the last several days. Rich, what has stood out to you from Congress's reaction? And more importantly, what kind of unification or division are we seeing?
Well, it's really not surprising. There really is a chasm within the Republican Party, within the MAGA movement, if you will. There are those who are there are those who believe that the United States should put America first. They say that they believe that America should not be involved in wars in the Middle East. They're almost peace activists in the Republican Party, Marjorie Taylor Greene being one of them. And then on the Democrat, and then there are those also on the Republican side who are more establishment, like Mike Johnson, like Lindsey Graham, for example, who are very much supportive of using military action. They're the more hawkish wing of the party. It's very different than the Iraq War back in 2003 when the United States bombed Iraq, when there was near ecumenical or near universal support in the Republican Party in both houses of Congress for invading Iraq. Now it's very much, there's very much a schism in the Republican Party. Contrary-wise, in the Democratic Party, the Democrats are pretty much universally against this invasion, or at least believe that it is unconstitutional or it's a violation of the War Powers Act. There are a few exceptions, a few aberrations. One of them is John Fetterman of Pennsylvania, who I think Democrats thought back when he was running in 2022, when he ran in the primaries, the most liberal candidate of the race against more conservative Colin Ram, that he would be more that he would be a lot more liberal when it comes to military interventions, some other issues. He's become very much a Trump supporter when it comes to Iran. Richard Torres, congressman from New York, is another one. But the vast majority of Democrats are very much opposed to this, believing that it is not constitutionally permissible or that it is unethical to go into Iran. So the schism is very small on the Democratic side, but it's really it's a very much large scale on the Republican side, I think.
I want to put up this post from a former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. Taking a look here, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but she starts it with saying, tonight the president ignored the Constitution by unilaterally engaging our military without congressional authorization. Now, you touched on it a little bit, Rich, with that first response there, but how much weight is that argument going to carry going forward for those who do oppose the president's actions?
It depends, I guess, on what you mean by constitutional permissibility. Strictly speaking, the Constitution grants the United States Congress the power to declare war. They have that power. It's in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11. But the president also has the power in Article 2 to be the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. So it's very much, I think the president would say that he has the power to do that, and that he does not necessarily have to consult Congress. I think, though, that if you take the literal interpretation of the Constitution, it does require that when the president sends military forces abroad, that it needs to get a formal declaration of war. This has been done 11 times in American history. Back in 1950, when the United States engaged in the Korean War, Harry S. Truman, the president at the time, did not seek a congressional declaration. Instead, said he got authorization from the United States Congress to be involved in what he called the police action. That was continued by President Kennedy and Johnson in Vietnam. And every military conflict since then has not had an official declaration of war. They have simply authorized it. There is something called the War Powers Act, which was passed by a Democratic Congress over the veto of President Richard Nixon in 1973, which says that the president needs to essentially needs to inform the Congress of what's going on within 60 days or within 90 days if it's an emergency. So if you're very much a constitutionalist, I think you would say that the president needs a declaration of war. But I think most members of Congress would say that what he really needs is authorization for authorization, and he needs to notify Congress of exactly what he's doing. He needs authorization, meaning essentially he needs the Congress to give him carte blanche, like they did back in 1964 in the Gulf of Tonkin resolution with President Lyndon B. Johnson.
Rich, over the last several weeks, we have seen several members of the president's administration testifying before Capitol Hill. Given the fact that these strikes did happen, could we be seeing some more of those hearings coming up in the near future? And if we do, what kind of questions do you think lawmakers are going to be asking?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that if we do, obviously it's the Republicans that control the Congress right now. So theoretically, it wouldn't be in their best interest to potentially embarrass the president. But I think if there is, you'll see senators like Tim Kaine, for example, of Virginia, who's very closer to a constitutional literalist, asking where the president's constitutional authority comes here. I think in the United States House of Representatives, you'll see some like the more libertarian Republican Tom Massey, no friend to Donald Trump, asking about the constitutional permissibility, and you'll see you'll see a host of Democrats in both houses really asking those same questions. But by the way, it's Tim Kaine and it's Ro Khanna, a very liberal member from California, that are really instrumental in trying to chain the dog of war here.
And Rich, I know that you really are a history buff. When we take a look at what has happened overnight and in the last several days, while we can't really know how all of this is going to be affecting the future, we can't predict it, but how significant of a moment in American history is this?
It's very significant. It's extremely significant. I think that very few Americans were expecting that there would necessarily be a strike. I think that you have to look at what the potential blowback, what the unintended consequences are, like you do in any military action. Will there be essentially what will Iran's reaction be here? Then what will Israel's reaction be here? There have certainly been examples where American presidents have sent troops into action, at least recently. You can go back to Grenada with Ronald Reagan in 1983, then Panama with George H.W. Bush in 1990. Bill Clinton sent troops into Haiti back in 1994. He was about to invade, but the last minute, Jimmy Carter, Sam Nunn, and Colin Powell ingressed into Haiti and convinced Raul Cedras, who had taken over in a coup, to essentially egress from office. But there have been many military actions that have not necessarily been full-scale wars. Ronald Reagan, for example, bombing Libya back in 1986. So we'll see where this goes, but there certainly are some constitutional questions, and I think the Democrats are going to do all that they can to try to argue that this is an unconstitutional act by the president. There are even some, AOC being one of them, that have suggested that this may be grounds for impeachment and conviction. So we'll see where this goes, but this is certainly a very important part of our history, and probably the flagship event of the Trump presidency, at least in the second Trump presidency.
Rich Rubino, political analyst and historian. Always good to have you here on the program. Thank you for joining us to break down some of this reaction from Congress. And there's a lot more that we are expecting in the next several days, so we'll check in soon.
Indeed. Thank you so much for having me on again.
Of course. I do also want to bring on for our viewers a post on X from Vice President J.D. Vance. It was posted not too long ago, and I do want to read it in its entirety. It says this: two thoughts this morning. The operation last night is an incredible testament to American pilots and other service members, from General Kane to General Kurilla on down. While the media has attacked the president's senior team relentlessly and tried to sow fake division, last night would have been impossible without perfect coordination and discretion from the president's national security team. I'm incredibly proud of them, and I know the president is too. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. We are taking a live look out there in Jerusalem, Israel on this Sunday morning as we continue to monitor the latest between the war between Israel and Iran and the fact that the U.S. has officially launched military strikes against several nuclear facilities in Iran. I want to read some of this copy courtesy of the Associated Press, who have been providing live updates throughout the morning as they say this. The U.S. military struck 3 sites in Iran early Sunday, inserting itself into Israel's effort to destroy Iran's nuclear program in a risky gambit to weaken a longtime foe amid Tehran's threat of reprisals that could spark a wider regional conflict. I did show you just moments ago a post on X from Vice President J.D. Vance, where he commended the president's decision there to attack some of those facilities and those strikes that were unexpected, but they have brought a new level to this increasingly escalating conflict that first started back on June 13th. Now, several close U.S. allies did urge a return to the negotiating table in the wake of those strikes that fueled fears of a wider conflict, while noting the threat posed by Tehran's nuclear program. Some countries and groups in the region, including those that support Iran, condemned the move while also urging de-escalation. President Trump had said Thursday that he would decide within 2 weeks whether to get involved in Israel's wrong with Tehran. In the end, it took just days. Washington hit 3 Iranian nuclear sites early Sunday. While the amount of damage remained unclear, Iranian foreign minister said the U.S. had, quote, crossed a very big red line. The time for diplomacy was over, and Iran had the right to defend itself. Now, some have questioned whether a weakened Iran would catapult or remain defiant and begin striking with allies at U.S. targets scattered across the Gulf region. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres said he was gravely alarmed by the use of force by the United States, saying in a statement, quote, "There is a growing risk that this conflict could rapidly get out of control with catastrophic consequences for civilians, the region, and the world. I call on member states to de-escalate. There is no military solution. The only path forward is diplomacy." At the same time, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer calling for Iran to return to the negotiating table to diplomatically end the crisis, saying stability was the priority in the volatile region. The UK, along with the European Union, France, and Germany, tried unsuccessfully to broker a diplomatic solution in Geneva last week with Iran. We do have to step away for our final commercial break of this hour, continuing with more of this developing story when we come back.